Welcome back. Hope you all had a wonderful 4th of July, or if you're not in the States, hope you just had a great 4th of July anyway, just like any other day. So today is an exciting day for us. I'm out here at Westbury Acres. They're drilling all the holes for our new building. So they'll be pouring all the footings for concrete tomorrow, weather pending, of course, as is always the case here in the Midwest. You just never know. Since I'm out here though, I thought I would show you what the plots are looking like. I had a few questions when I posted on my Instagram about the midsummer and what things are looking like. So let's go take a look at a few things, talk about what I'm seeing. I also had a question about fertilizing in the summer. Is that still possible on cool season grass? Can you still do that? So we'll talk about that too. I got a couple questions recently about my program at home and whether you can fertilize your lawn, your cool season lawn specifically, in the middle of summer. So without a doubt, I would say this is something that I can attribute to drastically changing my lawn's look over the course of a year, is when I learned more about liquid fertilizers and the fact that you can continue to use fertilizers in the summer and not just do your once in the spring, 2 times in the fall type of program that most people would do with granular. Now, there's nothing wrong with that for a lot of people who want more of a minimal maintenance program, but I will say that the grass responds much, much better over the year if you are spoon feeding and you're giving the lawn smaller doses more evenly across the season. So just because it happens to be hot outside, now you don't want to be going out in the middle of the day and spraying a bunch of liquid fertilizer on your grass, but you can go out at the appropriate times of day. I usually go out in evening or even right after it gets slightly dark, and then I let that fertilizer sit on there. When it's nighttime, you don't have all that hot sunlight coming onto it. Then I'll run my regular irrigation at like 4 or 5 a.m., something like that, and run through my zones, and that has drastically changed the way that everything looks. So you'll see here in the backyard, I'm going with no irrigation back here this year just to see how far I can push it. But if I was irrigating, this would be a lot better program if I was doing that more spoon feed summer type thing. So I've noticed right now you can see some dog spots throughout the yard that are much, much greener than the surrounding grass. You can tell, after a while, you can get a sense when you look at the grass, you can tell that it needs some sort of fertilizer. So for me though, I'm not going to add anything to this just because it's already in a somewhat heat stressed stage. So if you've already gotten to this point, I wouldn't really consider putting a bunch of fertilizer on right at this point just because it needed to be done consistently before it got stressed. But there's nothing wrong with this. You can let this go. You'll come back here in the fall time and you'll get back on your fertilizer program. Hopefully get some good fall rains as well as the cooler weather comes. But you can see here out front, this is even where I'm cutting the grass shorter. Everything looks green, lush, and I'm adding less than an inch of water to this per week. So that's attributed to my program of every 2 to 3 weeks I'm doing a liquid fertilizer. This year it's been Equalizer. Sometimes I switch in the 1648 from Simple Lawn, but those two have been my main program. And then I'm using some Greener or Greener SP, one of those two for my micronutrients and some extra iron just because I have a higher pH and I tend to get a better color response with some liquid iron put onto the grass. So that's what I've been doing at home over the past couple seasons. This is probably the 3rd or 4th year of that. Really watching my water, not doing any overwatering, and also keeping up with consistent mowing and everything that you need to do. But yes, you can absolutely add some fertilizer to your lawn in the summer. I just wouldn't go bombing it with a bunch of granular that has to sit on the ground. I would be more targeting something with a liquid that's just small doses. You can do that every 2 to 3 weeks if you want to. I think you're going to really be happy with the results from that. So first of all, it's about 93 degrees right now, but the heat index is over 100. Just perfect, absolutely perfect weather for cool season grass. Not so much, but I know many of you have been actually experiencing similar things, and the plots are showing this in certain ways, and in other ways they're actually surprising me. So let's look at what I have going on. First and foremost, I want to tell you about some of the non-irrigated stuff that I'm working on over here. So I'm standing in the larger ryegrass plot right now, so I haven't been watering this, and really what I'm trying to do is just push it as far as I possibly can till the point that I see some wilt on it, and I'm not going to let it die just because there's really no point in doing that with ryegrass. It's not going to necessarily bounce back all that well from letting it get too crispy, but right now I've been pleasantly surprised at how well it's been holding on just with normal rainfall here, which we have had some rainfall this summer, but it hasn't been anything extreme. What you're going to see here is it still looks very, very brown, and we talked about this in a video not too long ago that many people probably would think, oh, it's so dry, it looks so dry, you must need to water it. But actually what's happening is that I'm still seeing all of those stems from the ryegrass, from the seed heads that were there in the spring, still be a problem. They haven't completely gone away yet. And so that's really mainly why you're seeing most of that brownish look to it. So it should look like this color-wise and everything when you have the proper amount of fertilizer on here, but right now I probably don't have quite enough on the rest of this, and that will be something that I will continue to work on. This will be much easier to do next season when I have more time to dedicate out here. Now we're going to talk about the larger fescue plot, and a couple things that are going on here is that I've been testing out a new fertilizer on the left side of this plot. So you're going to hopefully see here a line. Everything on this side has not really been fertilized all that much this season, and then I just started, about the line is like right through here. I just started with testing a different fertilizer, a brand new one that we are working on this side, and I'm getting a great color response out of it just a couple days after application. That got watered in by some rain, but other than that, this whole thing has not had any extra irrigation added to it either. If you're looking for a grass, I know many of you are looking for something that can do better in the summer heat and not have to be watered as much, or maybe you can't water it at all. I think this is going to be something that you could look at. So I'm planning to do an aerate and overseed on that for the fall, just because when I did this, some of it got washed out, and otherwise I didn't do a perfect job of getting it all watered in and making sure that the seed came in evenly, so it definitely could use an overseed, but that'll be coming this fall. So both ryegrass plots over here looking exactly the same as that larger one. They definitely have been showing the same type of conditions in the smaller plots. These fescue plots in the middle here are irrigated, and to be honest with you, probably slightly more than they even needed to be, just because I don't have irrigation set plot by plot right now. I just have my above ground system, which you'll see right over here, spraying onto these plots. So sometimes there's some overspray into these areas where if I had it plot by plot, I probably would not have watered the fescue quite as much as I have. But right now you can see that they are plenty green, looking good over here. The only thing that I will say is that I need to sharpen my blade on my mower, because especially with fescue, that wider blade, it's not terribly wide, but you'll start to notice that you need to sharpen your blade or really keep on top of that, because it starts to show some white tips on the grass and then just doesn't quite look as good as the bluegrass. The bluegrass has surprised me immensely. Not because I don't know anything about bluegrass. I've had bluegrass at my house since I started doing lawn care stuff, which is back in 2011-ish. But this year I decided to cut it lower from the start. I'm sitting at 2 inches on this, and I haven't wavered from that, even slightly lower earlier in the spring. Back home I was always trying to push the height of it, but I knew I didn't want to do that anymore. It never worked out all that well. So sitting at 2 inches, of course it does have irrigation added to it. I'm going to this fall add a plot over here that has basically unirrigated, just to see how far can I push the bluegrass before it wants to go into a dormant state, just to compare it to the fescue. Overall, either one of these, this one has a slight amount of ryegrass into it. If it were me, I'd probably just pick the 100% blue, even though it does take a long time to grow in. Once it is grown in, looks amazing. That is the plot stuff midsummer here, considering the type of summer we've been having. We're 90 degrees or more through most of June. I'm not too disappointed with what I'm seeing on first year grass. That's also the thing that you have to remember, is that these are not a year old. So it's hard to judge something immediately, especially when something's not even a year into maturity, but I'm just showing you what things are looking like right now. So you can see here out on this boulevard area, this is also a reno that was done last fall, so less than a year old. That's my Knorr ryegrass in that section. Really, really love the way that that's looking. So a quick look here at the shade or not so shady section over here. So the purpose of what I was doing down here, and we'll get down to the shade here in a second, but this upper part was what I wanted to be able to test with that fine fescue. It has a slight bit more rye in it as well, but this section I knew was going to get more of the full sun. So wanted to test that. This is obviously non-irrigated, doesn't have any extra water to it, and so far really impressed with how it's doing out in this section right here. So you see down here at the bottom now, this is about as much sun as it gets, and this is the brightest part of the day right about now. It's like 1:30, so this is your top down sun that's happening down here right now. So you see these spots, that's about all of the full sun that it gets down here. And I noticed in these sun areas that they're still holding on pretty well. It's starting to just turn slightly brown on the fine fescue, but not anything like completely dormant by any means, but I can tell that it's starting to get to the hottest part of the year. The other thing is that just as far as how much this is growing vigorously down here, not nearly as much as it was in the spring, which completely makes sense because it's a much more cool season grass and likes that cooler weather in the springtime and the fall time. I mean, obviously, I can't really be too upset with how this looks. First season, not even a year old that this was planted as well, so it should get better with maturity. And I'll come down here this fall and see if I want to do any slight overseeding to it. I probably would really like to do a top dressing down here of just a light top dressing of topsoil. It's pretty bumpy the last winter time when there wasn't a whole lot of grass cover. There's a lot of deer traffic down here, and you don't really notice it too much unless you're walking on it or mowing, that it's fairly bumpy. The other thing to recap would be this damage that's been occurring on the north side of my house on the Kentucky Bluegrass mono stands that are over there. I'm still seeing continued damage. I'm not really quite sure if it looks like it's getting worse or if it's pretty much staying in place. I did put an application of imidacloprid down on this, and from what Mr. RD, Ryan DeMay, told me, most likely that takes about 2 weeks for it to kind of kick in and start to control some of those things that might be going on insect-wise. So probably by the end of this week, I will be at the 2-week mark of that. So hopefully it doesn't get any worse than that. Really still thinking it's billbug. I need to do another soap test because I didn't really find anything on my first one. But definitely something's going on over there, and I've been seeing similar things from other people saying just specifically on their bluegrass, they're having these spots that die off. The grass completely pulls. No roots left or anything, and it's not like a dormancy problem or any sort of fungus that I've been able to visibly see over there. That is where I'm currently at, so I'll see, hopefully that app will actually make a difference and I'll stop it in its tracks where it's at right now. So believe it or not, if you're thinking about doing a full renovation this fall, you're going to want to start thinking about that sooner rather than later, getting yourself planned, and also starting to spray out some areas if you need to do that. I'll probably do a video on that very soon just so you understand what to do preparation-wise, or if you're just thinking about doing an overseed this fall, we'll go over that stuff too. Thanks so much for watching today. We'll see you next time.